So I started reading through Mark this week. I don't know how many of you guys have taken me up on this challenge to read through the New Testament or not, 5 chapters at a time, but I threw that out in my first video anyway, and I've been kind of updating you each week. Mark is so much different than Matthew. Not to compare them or anything like that, but Mark is like reading some kind of comic book or something. It is like action story after action story. It's short and sweet and to the point. And one of my favorite stories in Mark comes in Mark chapter 5, and it's exactly that kind of story. Jesus goes off the beaten path. I don't know why he does it. I have my suspicions that, he probably wanted to get away with the disciples or whatever, but the Bible says that immediately as soon as they touch ground over in the Decapolis, this guy meets them on the shore. And he's not just like any guy. He is like the king of screw-ups. The Bible describes his life as this life of torment in so many different ways. He lives amongst the graves. His people have tried to capture him several times and contain him, but every time he's like broken the chains and like run away. He cuts himself. He never wears clothes. This guy's life is one day of hell after another. And I don't use that language lightly. The Bible says that this guy was possessed by a legion of demons. Now, believe what you want about that, but when they meet Jesus on the shore, they freak out because they know who Jesus is. And Jesus, the superhero, sees this entire situation for what it is, and he absolutely refuses to allow this guy to remain another day, in this torment. And so he commands the demons to come out. Now, the demons, they beg Jesus to be able to go into the pigs on the hillside that is nearby. And so Jesus gives them permission, and when they do, the pigs go crazy. They run down the hill into the sea and basically drown themselves, okay? And so here's the picture that happens within minutes of Jesus landing on their shore. There's a guy that was broken, whose life has been tormented, who is totally healed, and the entire herd of pigs on the nearby hillside runs down and kills themselves. And so, picture this if you're in the local village. They come out to see what's going on. Here is the local nut job, that all of them have known all their lives, that is dressed and in his right mind talking to Jesus, and there's dead pigs floating everywhere. Literally, in moments, their entire world is thrown on its end. And you know what it says, the Bible says in that moment? It says that these people were afraid. And rightly so. Their world, according to them, had just been turned upside down by a man. This guy who had been so tormented was totally healed. It's the kind of thing that would be hard to believe even if you were standing right in front of this guy, knowing the entire history. Nobody would believe you in some ways. In fact, I suspect that there's probably some of you who are wondering what in the world I am telling this story for, because you're feeling kind of the same way. You're probably not sure what to do with it yourself. So why would I share a crazy story like this with you? Well, here's the thing. This is where this meets rubber for road for me. Number one, I believe the story's true. But number two, there are days in my life when I need a crazy, unbelievable, impossible, redeeming story in my own personal life. I want you to understand that there are some times when I appreciate more than anything else that Jesus was human, and need reminders that Jesus was human, that he understands the struggles that I go through, that he himself has experienced the troubles that this world has offered and came out on top. In fact, knowing that Jesus, it makes Jesus more real to me. It makes him easier to talk to. You want to talk about prayer, it's so much easier to talk to a friend, somebody who's real, isn't it? It makes him the perfect advocate to run in between me and God, who is perfect and beyond the comprehension of man, because he knows me. But then there are other days in my life, and I can't speak for you, but when I need to be reminded that Jesus was more than human. That he was the guy who could land on a shore that was foreign and turn the entire world upside down. That he was the healer and the restorer that could take a hopeless, helpless situation that everybody else had given up on and bring restoration to it. Sometimes I need to be reminded that the Jesus that I come to is the same one that the Bible tells me was there at creation, who put the stars in their place, and who is neither afraid nor has ever met a situation in his life that is beyond him. Because he was human, but he was also God. Why do I need that? Well, here's the thing. Sometimes I need more than just a friend in my life. You know, the man that I told you about, he is never named in the Bible, but do you know what he needed most that day? He needed God to meet him on that shore. But maybe more than that, he needed a God who knew him, who saw what he needed, who knew his name, but more than that, who had the power to restore his life. And that's where the story meets me. Because that day, he found a Jesus who was all of those things to him. And sometimes we need that in our lives, don't we? We need the lion and the giant who fights on our behalf, but we also need the lamb that laid down his life for us when we least deserved it. There are days when we need a king and a ruler, but there are also days when we need the humble servant. There are days when I have come to find that Jesus is the greatest friend. But then there's also days when I've come to need the champion, the unequal, undefeated, worthy of depending on in my greatest, struggles and troubles, champion. But let me ask you today, what about you? I mean, I don't pretend to know what you're going through or what you're facing right now, or what kind of monumental, impossible situations you might be facing. But I do know this, sometimes I need more than Jesus the church guy. Sometimes I need Jesus the warrior, Jesus the rescuer. You see, my name is Kevin, and all of this, as hard as it is to admit, this is part of going deeper. And here's the best part about this entire conversation today. The same Jesus that stepped onto that shore that day and absolutely transformed this guy's life is the same Jesus that is here today, that is waiting and ready for you to speak his name and invite him into your life. To do something that people in your life might someday look back on and say, that was impossible, that can't be true. So how about it today? Do you want to go deeper? I guess the ball's in your court, isn't it?